Welcome to TRN, everyone. Today we're looking into some really troubling reports about alleged Russian intelligence involvement in setting fires on cargo planes. These incidents happened across Europe back in July and August of 2024.
That's right. We're drawing on investigations reported by several outlets, and the picture they paint is quite alarming. Authorities were apparently worried this could have led to a major catastrophe.
And the method they supposedly used involves these throwaway agents, people recruited online who might not have even known what they were really getting into.
Exactly. That seems to be a key part of it. The idea is you recruit individuals for what seem like minor tasks, maybe just shipping a package, possibly keeping them completely in the dark about the actual objective.
So it shields the people higher up the chain.
Precisely. Plausible deniability, and if the agent gets caught, they don't actually know much.
Okay, let's map this out. The timeline starts July 20th, 2024, at Leipzig Airport in Germany. A package catches fire.
Yes, and then similar incidents followed, first in Warsaw, Poland, and then later in Birmingham in the UK.
And how did investigators link these? Was it immediately obvious?
Well, not immediately, but they started finding similar components in the devices that caused the fires. That's the first clue. Then a really key event happened in Vilnius, Lithuania.
Ah, tell us about that.
A man brought these packages to a DHL station. They seemed totally harmless, massage cushions, cosmetics, even a sex toy, apparently.
Okay, so things that wouldn't necessarily trigger alarm bells.
Exactly. They passed the routine security scans, but inside, they allegedly contained these time-delayed incendiary devices.
Wow. And European security agencies, they believe the Russian military intelligence, the GRU, is behind this, a whole network.
That's the strong suspicion, yes. A transnational operation involving maybe around 10 individuals. Some alleged high-ranking GRU members have even reportedly been identified in connection with it.
Though, predictably, Russia denies everything, calling it paranoia, conspiracy theories.
Standard playbook, really.
Yeah.
Deny involvement, label it as Western hysteria.
Let's talk about the devices themselves. Based on magnesium, you said. Why magnesium?
Well, magnesium burns extremely hot once ignited. It can be set off with a relatively simple timer mechanism, and it's designed to start a significant fire rather than cause an explosion in the traditional sense.
And maybe less likely to be picked up by standard explosive scanners.
That could be part of the calculation, yes. Scanners are often looking for specific chemical signatures of common explosives, and magnesium might not fit that profile in the same way.
So where were these packages headed? You mentioned Lithuania as the origin.
Right. 2 were sent from Lithuania to Poland, and 2 were sent from Lithuania to the UK. One of those UK-bound packages was the one that burned in Leipzig during transit.
And there were later packages, too. Test runs.
Yeah, that's interesting. Later on, 2 packages were sent from Warsaw, one to the USA and one to Canada. These apparently contained harmless things like shoes and T-shirts, but also a tracker.
So authorities are wondering if those were meant to carry devices, too, perhaps.
Yeah.
Testing the routes.
That's definitely a line of investigation. Were they testing the logistics, or was the plan disrupted before they could send more dangerous packages further afield? It's still being looked into.
That near miss in Leipzig, it's chilling. The report said the flight was delayed, if it had been on time.
The fire could easily have broken out midair, over land, over sea. The potential consequences are horrific to think about. A simple delay might have averted disaster.
So how far along are the investigations now? You mentioned Poland, Germany, the UK, Lithuania.
The report suggests they're quite advanced. Authorities in all those countries are collaborating closely. Publicly, though, they're being very tight-lipped, which is understandable given the sensitivity and ongoing nature of the investigation.
There was also mention of a Ukrainian man living in eastern Germany. His place was searched.
Yes, back in February. It seems he had alleged contact with the person who shipped the packages from Vilnius. He claims he was just asked by an acquaintance to contact the Lithuanian guy about a supposedly lost package.
So he denies being involved in the actual plot.
Correct. He denies any direct involvement with sending the incendiary packages and isn't currently considered a suspect in that sense. But it illustrates how these networks can potentially draw people in on the periphery, perhaps unknowingly.
Which brings us back to this agent pyramid theory. Can you break that down a bit more?
The theory, as reported, is that a wanted Russian man allegedly recruited a 27-year-old Ukrainian man based in Poland. This Ukrainian individual apparently already had convictions for things like money laundering and cyber fraud, but was free pending an appeal.
Okay, so potentially vulnerable or already operating outside the law.
Possibly. He was arrested His alleged role was transporting the packages to Lithuania, maybe even arming the devices, and then handing them over to a Lithuanian man identified as Alexander S.
And Alexander S. is the one who actually shipped them.
Allegedly, yes. Using a false name, shipping via DHL and DPD to fake addresses in London, Birmingham, and also Poland, DHL has confirmed they dealt with incidents and have upped their security measures since.
So these throwaway agents, it really seems central to the strategy. Recruiting people online for tasks that seem small or maybe slightly dodgy, but not overtly like terrorism.
It's a way to operate with lower risk and more obscurity. Especially, as some reports suggest, after many professional Russian spies might have been expelled from European countries following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, they might be relying more on these kinds of recruits.
And the investigation isn't just focused on the lower rungs, right?
Yeah.
There are links being made higher up, potentially to GRU leadership.
Yes, there's the arrest of a Russian man, Alexander B., in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He was initially suspected of training Moldovans for protests, but then he was extradited to Poland.
Why Poland?
Because Poland suspects him of coordinating sabotage activities, including the sending of these packages, so that potentially links the operation to someone with more direct GRU ties.
And there's another name mentioned, GRU Colonel Denis Smolyaninoff.
Right. He was actually sanctioned by the EU back in December 2024. The allegation is that he was recruiting agents specifically for sabotage within the EU using social media platforms.
So a pattern of recruiting individuals online for disruptive actions.
It certainly looks that way, and what adds another layer of concern is evidence suggesting the GRU has been interested in disrupting air traffic for quite some time.
Really? For how long?
Documents reportedly originating from the Dossier Center, which is funded by Kremlin critic Mikhail Khodorkovsky, suggest that as far back as 2014, the Russian military intelligence was discussing ways to interfere with civilian flights.
How? What kind of interference?
Things like jamming radio communications between pilots and air traffic control, or interfering with the instrument landing system, the ILS, which is crucial for landing in poor visibility.
And we have seen an increase in GPS interference affecting air traffic recently, haven't we? Including over northern Germany and the Baltic Sea region.
Yes, there have been numerous reports of GPS signals being jammed or spoofed, forcing planes to rely on other navigation methods. Whether that's directly linked to these specific GRU plans from 2014 is hard to prove definitively, but it fits a pattern of probing and potentially disrupting Western infrastructure.
Security officials seem incredibly worried. The Lithuanian intelligence chief basically said the people behind this find endangering lives acceptable.
And the head of Germany's BND, their foreign intelligence service, expressed fears about a growing willingness to not just risk, but perhaps deliberately take human lives in these kinds of operations. These are stark warnings.
Absolutely chilling. So why did these package incidents stop, apparently? Was there an intervention?
Well, one analysis suggests the United States made it very clear to Russia through certain channels that they knew about their involvement and that any further escalation, especially targeting flights heading towards North America like those test packages, would absolutely not be tolerated.
So a direct warning might have put a lid on it, at least for now.
That's one theory. Another is that maybe Russia felt they'd already achieved their objective, demonstrating the vulnerability of Western logistics and security with relatively minimal resources, causing disruption and unease.
A NATO diplomat, James Epatharai, called it a clear escalation, didn't he? Highlighting the risk of a plane fire or even a crash in a populated area.
Yes, underlining just how dangerous this type of activity is. It's not just disrupting mail, it's playing with fire, literally in a critical transport system.
And we should probably see this in the broader context, right? There have been other reports of suspected Russian sabotage, damaging cars, maybe stoking political divisions like anti-green sentiment in Germany.
It does seem plausible that these aren't isolated incidents, but potentially part of a wider campaign of hybrid warfare, using various means to destabilize, disrupt, and sow discord in Western countries.
These reports really paint a disturbing picture then. Clandestine operations targeting vital infrastructure, potentially risking countless lives. And this use of unwitting people as throwaway agents is a particularly nasty development.
It is, and knowing that the GRU might have been thinking about disrupting air travel years ago just makes these recent events feel even more calculated and serious.
And while the official investigations continue and Russia issues its denials, The details uncovered really raise huge questions about the security of global logistics, don't they? And how these state-sponsored tactics are evolving.
Absolutely. It highlights the immense challenge for security agencies trying to prevent threats like this in a world that's so interconnected. It makes you think, what are the wider implications here for international relations, for the future of these kinds of covert ops? It certainly gives you pause about the hidden vulnerabilities in systems we rely on every day.